And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha along with Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and Lisa Jandovitz. Well, Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans held a special hearing today on a case that has the president's immigration amnesty on ice. According to the Associated Press, the Department of Justice argued that Texas, which led a coalition of 26 states, has no legal standing in the matter. Texas's Solicitor General countered that granting legal status to immigrants will be costly for the Lone Star State. The judges did not rule on the appeal today. Outside the courthouse, protesters in support of amnesty made their voices heard. And here's one local paper catching up with one of the protesters who remains realistic about the chances of the appeal being overruled.
We're always hoping for the best, but also we know that there are conservative judges. We're in a conservative state, so we definitely have to be, very conscious that it might not go well for us, but at the same time we want to use the opportunity to bring awareness to the community and the rest of the nation what is really happening here, and that in court what is at stake is not only papers, it's not only become documented, it's also about human dignity and justice.
Now, we should note that the Fifth Circuit Court is conservative. So, Heather, looking at your magic 8-ball, and I know you have one, is this going to be?
I definitely
is this going to be overturned?
It is a conservative court. It's a very conservative court. At the beginning of the month, they found in a similar case that Mississippi didn't have standing to even bring this type of case. However, that was a different 3 judges. These 3 judges, one is a Reagan appointee, one is a W. Bush appointee, and one is an Obama appointee. I think that given the makeup of this court, the Judge Jerry Smith is the judge who asked most of the questions today. He is very, very strongly and has a huge problem with President Obama's overreach in constitutional issues. And I think given the makeup of this court, it's not, this injunction will stay.
Rick?
We should also, I think, remind everybody what this appeal is about. This is the case from Texas where the judge said that Obama did overreach using an executive order, and so he froze any action at this point. I got to tell you, I think that there's no chance the government wins on this. Everything you said is right on the money. Yes, it's very conservative. Yes, Judge Smith. But I have another problem. I think the standing argument doesn't hold up. If I were on that court, as much as I personally would like to see that executive order go through, I think Texas does have standing.
They do have
so
standing.
I think that the government loses.
So for the layman's at home, how long does this stay in limbo? Because that's where it stays,
Well, it may just be gone. It will probably go to the Supreme Court after this.
What will happen, this is just to decide, the judge said, okay, everything has to stop until I actually decide. He hasn't actually decided whether or not this is constitutional. It's just, this has to stop until we decide. So it's going to have to go through the process. He has to decide, given that he stopped everything, the assumption is he's going to say that this is unconstitutional. It will then go back to the court that heard it today to determine what they think, and then likely go to the Supreme Court, which means it's still going to be around at the time of the next election.
You were a judge once.
I was, and I actually want people to also understand when we discuss standing what that means. You can't just bring a lawsuit. You have to have a personal interest in the outcome. You have to have something to lose or gain. And that's where in the other case they said, well, the state of Mississippi has nothing to lose or gain.
Right.
I don't agree with that ruling. I think Texas does have a great deal to lose or gain in this, so I think that's why they have standing. Yeah, I think the government's got a real problem with this. I really do. They would have probably preferred any other appellate circuit in America than the one they got.
And the judge that they got has been known to, when it came to Obamacare, he got all kinds of angry about the constitutional issues there and really railed at the Justice Department. So when they saw, you find out what judges you have sometime before your arguments, I'm sure that they were quaking in their boots.
I'm sure they were not happy.
Okay, so let's say the government loses here. What happens to all those illegal immigrants?
It just freezes for now because it'll go on.
They don't get deported?
No. Okay. It's just the executive order can't go into effect when it's being challenged like this. So the next step, I would think, is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court may or may not hear it. And now the real question is, after it's gone through the whole process and every court has affirmed what's happened, what happens then? That could be the end of the executive order.
Let me ask then, when 3 years ago, I guess, when President Obama issued, it was the Dreamers, the Dreamers Amnesty, and over 500,000 illegal immigrants got Social Security cards. How was that able to happen?
It was never contested in the same way. And it never, I mean, this judge found on a very interesting administrative law argument that no one really anticipated. So it, you know,
Was
it's
it
going to be
because of the executive order that it was
It
not?
was the type of
okay.
executive order, and it was the way in which it was implemented by President Obama that the judge took issue with.
This case, I think Heather will agree, shows you the difference between a really smart lawyer and one who maybe isn't quite so clever. The way they attacked it in this court, administrative order and administrative law, was so intelligent that, you know, I actually favor the other side, but when I read the case, I just went, this was really smart.
Yeah, and the arguments today, I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing, but it was 2.5 hours, and they weren't given that much time, but the judges were peppering them with questions. When you're arguing these things, you know, you have your little speech set up
Right.
and you're ready to go, and then they just started with questions like crazy, and you could hear the protesters from outside, which just goes to show, you know, obviously what an emotional issue it is. It's going to be an issue that's still going to be around. I think a lot of people had hoped this would be decided before the next election, probably people on the GOP side more than anyone else, so that it wouldn't be such a big issue.
But let's
It's not gonna be.
let's remember one other thing. This executive order, with this case, without this case, it goes away instantly if Congress will deal with the question. So if this ends up, and I think it will, I think that this lower court ruling that's being appealed, it's going to hold, in my
Yeah, me
opinion.
too.
The Supreme Court's probably going to refuse to hear it, and it's going to stay. Hopefully this will motivate Congress, rather than having a bad situation, to finally act. What Obama said was true right from the start. He says, if you don't like this executive order, it can be gone in a heartbeat. Congress simply act.
I thought you were going to say, if you like this executive order, you
can keep
your
it.
executive
That's right.
Maybe that's what they were thinking. yeah.
Right, that's what he was hoping, right? Enough people will like it that they'll want to keep it, or enough people will be upset about
Now,
it.
do you think that we're going to see cases like this now brought in other jurisdictions?
Well, yeah, and you know, we're seeing more and more lawsuits against President Obama. You know,
Yeah.
you've got the climate change lawsuit that was just recently filed. There's something now I saw today about Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, you're going to see more and more challenges to his ability to do this type of thing, because you now see that there's some wiggle room here.
Yeah, and it makes for great politics,
Well,
great
yeah.
newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely.
2016, big issue.
Well,
What do you rank it? 1, 2, 3. I mean, we're down to 10
if Obama
seconds.
were on the ballot again, which he's not.
Of course.
So, you know, I don't think it's going to be as big as it would have been a couple years ago.
Right. Well, he could still be on the ballot. I heard a third term. I see him play. Kidding. Coming up next, is Hillary really the everyday American she's portraying herself to be? This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax.